Hello and welcome. So today what we're doing is starting on section 4. So this is going to be another large section, which that is just means 25 rows, similar to section 2, with a slightly different color pattern or color order, I should say, for the larger triangles. So definitely excited to get started. Go through some troubleshooting tips and tricks that I do. So we'll pull up the progress tracker here, so you can kind of see what we're doing as far as the color palette, color order that we're going to do. So this is row 52. So you'll see from the progress tracker, we are starting with the peach color for the first block. So let me get this added. We'll pull the peach through this way. So we are going to start with 6 peach, 1 dark pink, 6 peach. So it's inverted from the row right below. And we'll start with that. All right. And let me know. Right now, I decided to do kind of a 3 or 4 rows a day, just as a basic kind of outline. If you can go faster, definitely let me know. Or if it's too fast, let me know kind of the speed or an ideal kind of scrap yarn project if you just want to learn the technique and get started. Something like the Valentine block I did on an earlier video is that, sufficient to learn the technique, but not be too time consuming. Trying to get a better feel for the crochet alongs about kind of where people are at, what they want to see, and how fast they want to move on these particular projects. So definitely let me know and we'll keep going. We'll probably try a few more things before we really narrow down the best of all worlds, if you want. So this next block, we're going to start kind of expanding the colors. So the other blocks, we did a lot of the light peach and the red combo. So now we're going to get into a larger block. We're going to start with the dark pink. And then we're going to do dark pink. So I think that's 12. Get through here. And then we're going to pick up the peach for 1 single. And then swap over to the red for another 12. And 1 more. All right, we're going to move the progress tracker over real quick. See what we got going on. So we'll have a light pink and then a red and a light pink. So as I go through this row, I definitely want to uh, look at some other comments that I got recently. I know that the way that I do these projects, I leave the fringe on the ends, and all I say when I fringe is just when I attach the yarn on either side or cut the yarn at the end. I just leave. I don't do an extra knot. I don't do anything too fancy with them. I just kind of let them be just as a personal preference. Sometimes if you complete the project and you've got, another 10 hours of work weaving in ends or doing a border or something, it's not the way my brain works. I do enough color changes and I'm fine with the fringe, so I just wrap it around like a shower rod to be able to hang it. is another way I kind of utilize those ends as a way to get rid of them. You definitely can kind of weave them into the project. What you're going to run into is there's just so much bulk here at the end. Um, Probably these, 4 inches, these first 4 inches are going to get real bulky if you're going to try to weave it in that way. I don't see a way kind of around that or an efficient way to do that. I've seen a couple people do a border, so they'll go in. So the rectangle's about twice as high as it is wide, so you probably do 2 stitches per row, and kind of encapsulate, do like a couple rows around and kind of bend it over, and stitch it into the back. That way it encapsulates the border, which is something that I definitely need to learn. I've tried it a couple times and it doesn't look great the way I do it. I'm sure other people have had more success than I have. So it's definitely a learning opportunity. If you do have a way of doing it, to encapsulate these ends, let me know the tips and tricks. I do leave about 4 inches just because if you do cut it really thin, if they do get loose on you that way, they'll be hard to kind of pull back through, and you don't want to entice, them coming loose that way. Again, this is all these color changes kind of create a big knot, so it would have to be quite intense, for it to completely unravel. But definitely, if you start seeing ends pop through or get untied, you might have cut the ends a little bit too short. Another thing maybe is to run if you have a sewing machine, like a running stitch or something, edge stitch, across the way just to kind of hold it. And you might be able to cut it real thin in that sense. But that was something I wanted to try on a scrap project. Just because I get a lot of complaints about the fringe, preference wise, if you don't like it, you don't like it. So just thoughts, kind of troubleshooting some ideas, if people really don't like the ends that way. Um, if you have a better way of doing it, obviously everybody's open ears on that. You could also kind of almost like put like a little extra bit of yarn and knot it in a way it's almost like a tassel. Um, it might be a little bit more attractive in that sense. I know like some of those, in-store blankets always have, some tassels. So things to think about. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. We're going to grab a pink. And then we're going to do 12 peach. Another thing, I don't know if how many people have those like stitch counters or something, if they're handy. I was thinking about trying them, but the way my activity works, I'll be busy trying to troubleshoot the stitch counter versus actually focusing on my work. So I don't mind counting, but if any of those stitch counters, um, or even row counters are helpful in projects like this, please share those details with the group. I just want to make sure that, a lot of these techniques are accessible to everybody if they're interested in learning tapestry crochet. We don't want the projects to be stressful or more stressful. Um, we want them to have a bit more relaxation effect for everybody versus being just a pain in the butt to have to pick up every day. We're going to grab the red here. So I always like this particular block in the way that it's so useful. You could almost like see the curvature even though all your lines are technically straight. It's just so unique in that sense, of what you can do with it, whether you're creating waves or, it's like, yes, this is a diamond shape, straight line. This is a straight line, but it's at a different angle, so it kind of creates that, bend almost, and that's what really helps bring out the shape of the heart, in here. So you can kind of see down here, you have very, very pointed angles at different directions, so it just smooths that curvature out. And it makes such a great shape. And you could use it to create, an X and O in a very similar sense. You have some of these, you can bend the O a lot more like you do the heart, and then just keep the X really angular. Things like that. You could do so much with just kind of the similar block patterns, and you know, the counts always, or the count, the order of the colors, are going to be very much similar. Kind of helps not make it quite as a struggle to count each row individually. So we are going to finish the red here. Pick up the pink. I about grab the dark pink. I want a peach. And if you can't, it's obviously past Valentine's Day, but it can be a Mother's Day gift. I know that's coming up, so that might be an anniversary gift. It could be very flexible in that sense, or just an inspiration for your next project. All right, so I have the red and the peach going. We're gonna do another light pink, one red. Two more blocks to go, not too much more. Did it again, grab pink instead of the peach. Two and one. We're gonna grab the light pink for one. Pick up the red for another 12. I see a light pink, so I'm gonna grab that real quick, move the tracker over, and we're gonna finish off with a 6 light pink. One red, and 6 light pink. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish day 17. So that's gonna be 52, 53, and 54 rows. Um, So when we start getting into the tall, large blocks, just remember these shorter, or I should say narrower blocks are kind of double. So you get 2 rows um, before you increase by 1 on each side. And then these kind of larger blocks, you can see you increase each row by 1. So it's going to be a little bit more repetitive than some of the smaller sections that we do. But in short, you should be able to kind of follow the idea of the pattern and not necessarily sit there and focus on counts on each row. So it's a little bit more extensive that way, but we'll get up to 54. Whoops. Here, I'll take a progress photo and we'll continue on for the next 8 days. We'll be working on section 4, and then the final 4 days of the month will be on section 5. So let me know if you have any questions. We'll go from there, and I'll see you in the next one.